So, today I'm going to tell you the meaning of life.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. I can't do that. That is a question that mankind has been asking for thousands of years. And so we will talk about ego, and it would be very egotistical of me to claim that I could tell you the meaning of life. But I think that after this workshop, you'll have tools to find more meaning in your life. And I personally, on the Camino de Santiago, think that part of the meaning of life, metaphysically, is finding the meaning of life. But that's really kind of deep and personal subject, but that's not the point of this lecture. So let me start off by telling a story. So we're focusing on the third pillar of the holistic success model, which is meaning. Okay, before I go to the story, the three pillars that I've come up with for meaning are purpose, growth, and contribution. So we'll go through each of these three subcategories today. So for purpose, I want to start off by telling a story. This is the story of Sir Galahad. And Sir Galahad was the lead knight, or the most important knight, the most trusty knight of King Arthur. And one day, King Arthur, and this is a myth, by the way, one day King Arthur comes down with an illness. He's very sick, and they think that he only has a few days left to live. And so King Arthur talks to his knight, Sir Galahad, and asks him to find a cure for his illness. And so Sir Galahad asks all the wise men in his town and searches the villages over, and he discovers that the king is enchanted, and there are only two beings, two creatures that can save him. One of them is on the other side of the earth, and he will never make it to this wizard in time to save King Arthur. And the other, they hear, is this evil, heinous witch. And so King Arthur says, okay, this is my duty to Sir Galahad says, this is my duty to save King Arthur. So he goes to the lair of the witch, and he travels through the night into the witch's lair. He crawls deep into this cave to discover the evil witch. And he's terrified. He sees the most heinous, foul-smelling creature giving off disgusting noises, and he knows that he has to ask the witch, how can he save King Arthur? So he goes to the witch and asks her, what can I do to save King Arthur? And the witch says, I can save King Arthur. However, if you want to save him, you must marry me. And so this is obviously a giant sacrifice that Sir Galahad must make. So before any large decision, as we learned, it's good to take a moment to think about it. So Galahad goes to the top of the mountain outside of the witch's lair and spends all afternoon meditating. And he decides, okay, this is the sacrifice I will make to marry the witch in order to save King Arthur. So he climbs back down the mountain, goes to the evil witch and says, okay, or he crawls into the lair of the evil witch, having decided that he will marry her. But instead of seeing the evil witch, he finds a beautiful princess. And he asks the princess, what happened to the evil witch? And the witch says, well, I'm actually a shapeshifter. And so by day, I'm an evil witch, and by night, I'm a beautiful princess. And then she gives Sir Galahad the choice. She says, if you marry me, you have a choice. You can have me as a witch by day and a princess by night, or you can have me as a princess by day and a witch by night. But you have to pick one. And so, again, Sir Galahad is faced with a dilemma because he doesn't know if he wants to have the evil witch during the day, that all of his community, all of his brethren will see him, and he's married a heinous witch. And then, but by night, he gets to have a beautiful princess for him when he is in private with her. To consummate the marriage. Or the other option is he gets to have the beautiful princess by day, where he gets to show her off to all of his friends and the whole community, and they all see that he's married the most beautiful princess in the land. However, when he comes home, he has to come home to this. And so the answer that he gives the witch is, he says, well, I will let you decide what you want to be. And so the witch says, that is not the answer I was expecting. And for your valor and your nobility, I will be a princess all the time. And they lived happily ever after. So, does anyone want to share what they think the moral or morals of this story are?
I think that the man giving the woman freedom was like very important in the relationship, and it allowed both guys to like, see their true self in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. Giving people choice is important. Wise man, I don't know if he was very wise, but he had a very wise saying. I think it was one of our boat drivers in Belize. He was talking about his wife, and he says, a happy wife is a happy life. Yeah?
I mean, the main point here comes like the guy just like caring deeply and like not for himself, like more for others than for himself in this case, like with the king and then with the like no matter the status, like so like he had a king which he had to serve, but then he had like this person that he was forced to, so like he didn't have to like let her have an option if she gave him the opportunity to choose, you know, but like so like the deep caring no matter the position, status, and just caring for the other being as much like no matter who they were to him, I guess.
Yeah. I think that's related to kind of the topic of karma, if you believe in it or not, but just doing good, and then eventually good comes back around to you. And this is kind of a personal experience with that, but like I've found that just a cultural thing, that South Americans tend to be so extremely hospitable and giving, and I think that's like really ingrained in their culture. And so like I had this friend. So last year I broke my ankle, and I was having a really tough time like commuting from my place to school every day. And my friend, I couldn't believe this. This is a total cultural thing. I don't know anyone, you know, in the United States would give this much, make this kind of sacrifice to help someone else. But he gave me his apartment, which was across the street from the school, and just let me live there for 6 weeks, basically, in his apartment. Every week I was like, no, I gotta go home. He's like, no, you stay here. And he was staying with his girlfriend, which was like an hour away. And like, I was like, and I would try and bring him gifts, and I would give him like a bottle of wine or something to say thank you, but he didn't want to take it. And he said to me, just give and give and give, and don't expect anything in return. And like, that was mind-blowing for me. That was really, really touching and special, because that is something that is not part of our culture in the United States, where you just give without expectation of having something in return.
How it changes from culture to culture. Right? Increasingly, we're becoming more and more transactional. Like, we're expecting, okay, if I take this person out for dinner, I'm going to sign a deal with them, or you're always trying to make deals with people. We don't no longer think of just altruistically doing things for the sake of it. it's concerning. But yeah, we should shift. Like even when I was younger, so my father told me that you're too innocent, man. People are taking advantage of you. And like that was how I was. I was just like I would do things for my friends, and sometimes they would take advantage of me. And then my father said, no, you're being dumb. You shouldn't be like them, but at least be smart enough that they don't take advantage of you. And till today, he tells me that. But then I think that there's no point in that. To always it reduces the amount of connection we can have with somebody else by having that guard up.
Yeah.
Whereas your friend, he just gave, and what you could have done anything, and he was just like, whatever, it's doing good.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Yeah. It can never be too much goodness. So another theme of this story is also about ego. So I know you guys will start reading that. So just before I get to that slide, ego is really interesting concept that I just learned about, more deeply last year. Where inside of all of us, there's two versions of us that are constantly in battle, and one is our ego or our false self, and the other is our true nature, which has a couple different names. And so that is kind of the decision that Sir Galahad is facing as well with his ego. Does he want to have the beautiful princess that he can show off to everyone else, which is more on the ego side, or does he want to have the beautiful princess for him to love on his own? So here are just some of the definitions of ego versus true self or your soul. And so the ego is kind of a lot of what society and cultures impose upon us. And this is a lot of the me and the selfishness, and then these are a lot of the behaviors and feelings that go along with your ego. So this is separateness, judgment, ignorance, hostility, resentment, pride, and yeah, there's quite a long list. And then on the other side of that is your true nature, or who you really are on the inside, which is your true self, which is the we, or the interbeing, which is oneness, compassion, enlightenment, friendliness, forgiveness, humility, gratitude, these types of things. Is there anything you guys want to share about that maybe explains it a little better than I could, if you have anything?
I think you explained it well. I would also add on that, like, even the term the self is a complex term. Like, what is the self, and I think that we simplify things so we can understand them. This is a wonderful way to understand our internal world. And we have many selves within us, right? Like, we have so many versions of ourself, the internal system of us understanding oneself. But yeah, I think this is a good distinction.
I think it's also nice to notice, like, when we are prideful, complaining, jealous, angry, looking for power. Like, this is a great list of like, oh, why is that happening? And then go backwards and sort of noticing sort of where we're at internally. Because I guess kind of what I've been talking about is starting internally and then generating certain behaviors, sort of. But also you could look at the behaviors you're engaging in on this list and see like where is internally that coming from.
Yeah.
I would also add that, like, environments in which we're raised or situations which we face will, like, either foster one or the other. And, like, if you think of all the ego, false self, as a lot of stuff comes out of pain and, like, hurt. And the true self, I think it can be fostered in certain environments, but it's just interesting to think about context.
Yeah, thank you.
You should look up one thing there when you have time. It's called Panchakosha theory. It's basically talking about how we have 5 layers. Like the whole.
Is this Deepak Chopra?
It's Indian philosophy, it's yoga philosophy. He probably has it from there.
Okay.
But there are 5 sheets. Pancha means 5 and Kosha means sheets or layers. And it talks about that in the very center it's the Anandamaya Kosha, the blissful being, who is all those things. You know, it's already full of it. You know, it's unaffected. It's always pure. It's pure light. And then the other 4 layers is like Anamaya Kosha, which means Anamaya Kosha is the layer made of food, so that's our body. And then below that is the Pranamaya Kosha. It's the kosha that's made of prana, like our energy, that's powering the body. And then below that is the Vijnanmaya Kosha, which is the intellectual sheath. That's where our intellect is. And then, below that is the Manomaya Kosha, it's our mind. And the mind is the holder of the ego. That's where we are relating ourselves to things that we are not. Like we're relating ourselves to self-denial or self-imposed or to sparse or future-oriented. That's the upper sheath, that's like the superficial level. And then under that is that Vijnanmaya Kosha, which is the intellectual layer. And using the intellect, you discriminate what is you and what is not you. And then you go to the center, which is the Anandamaya Kosha. It's easier on the diagram.
Yeah, that's cool. I was trying to see, so I have like 5 things that Deepak Chopra says that distinguishes your true nature versus false self. I was trying to see if it was associated. I don't know if it's exactly the same, but it sounds similar to what the 5 ways to distinguish that. So I'll get to that in a second. But that's really interesting. Yeah, I'd like to see that that diagram sometime. So here's another way to think about it. You get your photo. Do you want me to? So here's another way to think about it. What does this look like to you guys?
Unboxed refrigerator.
There you go, Italian. I'm putting you on the spot. So from this brick of marble, who made the David? Sweet. And do you know the quote that he would tell people when he was creating sculptures? Okay.
I know it was 16 when he made it. So like
Really?
something like that.
So this is a cool way that I like to think about it. So from this simple block of marble, which actually was a flawed piece of marble that was rejected from some other building in Italy, they gave to Michelangelo to build or sculpt the David, which is, has anyone seen the David in real life?
Yeah, it's in Florence. I've been maybe 15 times this year because they have free entrance sometimes.
Yeah. And can you describe it, like the first time you saw it, what did it look like?
So first time you see it, you just see it's massive because it's like 5 meters tall, the statue, and it's like maybe maybe it's the biggest marble statue. It's huge. And the story was like that they had this big piece of marble, and nobody wanted to make a sculpture out of it because it was too big. And then when you make it, you also have to think about that the lower part can stand the upper part, otherwise it will break. And then he made the headband is smaller. No, sorry, it's bigger because when you look it from down, the head is like further away. Yeah. So then when you look it from down, the shape makes sense.
The hand too is like pretty huge, relatively, if you look close. Yeah. So Michelangelo would be asked, like, how do you create such a masterpiece out of a block of marble? And he would respond maybe a little arrogantly, like any artist, not any artist, just kidding. But he would respond, I don't create it. The art is within the marble and I just set it free. And so this is how I like to think of, ego versus true nature. Ego is everything that's kind of closing us in, all the expectations of society, all of these facades, these masks that we put on to try to hide our true selves. But within each of us is a masterpiece. I don't know, is that a little corny, but...
I actually met an artist that told me the exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah, I didn't expect it.
Yeah. Well, he got it from one of the best. So then, yeah, going back to Deepak Chopra, just 5 ways to distinguish your true self from your ego. So he says that the true self is certain and clear about things, where the ego, or the everyday self as he calls it, is influenced by countless outside influences and confusion. The true self is stable, where the ego shifts constantly. The true self is driven by truth, where the ego is driven by I or me. The true self is at peace, where the ego is easily agitated. And the true self is love, whereas the ego seeks love from outside sources. So the reason why I'm talking so much about true self is that finding your true self, discovering what you really stand for, is the key or the first step towards discovering your meaning or your purpose. So that's just the first step. Now we'll go on to growth. And growth is super important. And I'll use the example of the late Kobe Bryant. Does everyone know who Kobe Bryant is? It's okay if you don't. Yeah? The Mamba, Black Mamba.
I actually only knew about him afterwards. Like, I didn't know, like, I knew the other big names, but I didn't know him after.
Yeah. So Kobe Bryant was one of the greatest basketball players to ever live. And, you know, if you talk to people in LA, the greatest. Along with, you know, Michael Jordan and LeBron, pretty much. One of those 3 are probably the greatest basketball players ever to live. And he just died quite tragically in a helicopter crash about a month ago or a few weeks ago. And it's really rocked the whole basketball community, the whole Los Angeles and California community. And it's amazing to see what an incredible impact this man had on the game of basketball, on all athletics. And he's a real inspiration for anyone who's trying to achieve anything. And, you know, he came from humble beginnings, and this man is such an inspiration of growth because I've got some stats here, just some of his accomplishments. You know, he went straight from high school into the NBA, and he was 18-time All-Star. He went to the All-NBA team 15 times, and he was the most valuable player in 2008. And he was the first guard to have played 20 seasons. And where does it say his championships? I think it's 5. I don't have his championships on here, but I'm pretty sure it's 5 championship rings.
That's
5?
3 with Shaq and 4 with the other thing.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so, you know, he's a icon of drive and overcoming adversity and growth. And, you know, if you hear his story, it's quite incredible. And he's always known for playing through like incredible injuries. Like he tore his Achilles, right? And just played through the pain. And, you know, he didn't stop after he was the All-Star or after his first ring. You know, he is a perfect example of constant growth. You know, growth and achievement is not something that you just achieve and then you can like sit back in your chair like, okay, I'm done. You know, after you've achieved or accomplished something, you should always continue to grow more and more. And there's plenty of examples of athletes and other professionals that are incredible examples of this. Because if you give up after you get that one goal, you know, you'll feel a void. And so you should always be continuously striving to grow and develop yourself. And then, oh yeah, so we were talking about blue zones the other day. And another thing that's really, you look puzzled, are you okay? Yeah, no problem. So we talked about blue zones, which are areas of concentrations of people who have lived over 100 years. And so there's this area in Japan called Okinawa, and they have the most, I hope I have a picture here. I think I actually put one. No. Oh, here we go. So everyone in this picture is over 100 years old, which just blows my mind. Like, they look so happy and like healthy. And so this is a Japanese concept, and it's actually how I get to the concept of Ikigai. But what their philosophy in this town is, they work until the day that they die. They really take pride in mastering their craft. And to them, it's not like retirement is thought of completely differently. They find honor in continually working, and because to them, they find meaning. And so I have a quote from one of the oldest people to have ever lived, where, the quote is, "Gradual improvement cultivates longevity." So this introduces us to this concept of Ikigai. So Ikigai translates to your reason for being, or your purpose, which, in a little bit we will do the Ikigai model together. But before we get to that, I want to get to the last part, the last pillar of meaning, which is contribution. So contribution is the role that one plays to bring or give back to your society. And the Dalai Lama is, one of the greatest icons when it comes to this topic. And so his quote that I have is that our prime purpose in this life is to help others. And if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. Do I have the quote? No. And so this is why giving feels so good. If you help someone else or you give a gift to someone else, it makes you feel good. This is why giving gifts on Christmas Christmas in my culture feels so great, or volunteering feels so great. And they actually did a study, which was quite interesting. So they had two groups of people. And with the first group, they gave them some money. Let's call it $100. I don't know if that's the exact amount, but they gave the people in group A $100. And they measured their happiness levels before they gave them the money. So, they were at a happiness level, let's call it here. I'm going to do it the right direction for you, so backwards. So happiness level here before they gave them the money. And then they gave them $100 and said, go out and buy yourself something with this $100. And so each of the participants in the study went out and bought something, and they found that their happiness levels spiked up to here when they bought something for themselves. But they came back in the next day and measured their happiness levels again, and they found that their happiness levels dropped right back down almost to the same level they were before they were given the money. And then by the second or third day, they were at the same happiness levels as before they were ever given the money. And so with the second group, they gave them the $100, and they said, take this $100 and buy something for someone that you love. And so they did the same study, measured, they were at this happiness level. When they gave a gift to someone that they loved with the money, their happiness levels spiked, and then they continued to measure their happiness levels. And they slowly and gradually went back down to the original happiness levels, but they had a much longer, prolonged and sustained happiness levels when compared to the group that spent the money on themselves. And so the conclusion of this study is that it's actually more beneficial. It brings yourself more joy to give to others than the same amount of joy is to give to yourself. The same amount of money. It brings more prolonged joy to give to others.
Why do we always go back to the 7? Like, let's say we're 7 out of 10 happiness, and then we get 10, and then it always goes back to 7. No matter how amazing thing happens in your life, you always end up at a 7 again.
Yeah.
Humans are just so unsatisfied.
Yeah, well, that goes into what I'll talk about tomorrow, which is like consumerism and how material things don't bring the purest sense of joy and happiness. Cool. Yeah, and then just from my experience talking with I had the opportunity to talk to many very successful entrepreneurs through my business school and many investors. And, they always talk about Guy has said it many times, you have to have that drive to be an entrepreneur because it's tough and you start off with very little and you have so many obstacles that you overcome. And, I've had the opportunity personally to speak with successful entrepreneurs and they all say the same thing. They all have the same sentiments, where they may have a lot of money and their businesses may be very important, but they will all tell you that what gives them the greatest joy and the greatest satisfaction is the impact that their company has made on the planet. So actually, I want to do a giving meditation, so I'm going to grab a chair. So starting off in our usual position, back straight, feet flat on the ground, shoulders back. And everyone can get right into closing your eyes. And think about a time that you did something really nice for someone else. Can be a little act of kindness or something that was really powerful and meaningful to someone else. And once you have that act in your head, just visualize that feeling that it made inside of you. And you can visualize it as a sort of beam of light connecting you and that other person from your heart directly to their heart. And as you're connected heart to heart with this other person, feel that bond growing stronger and that feeling of joy when you gave to that other person, and visualize the look on their face slowly, slowly, slowly getting happier and happier. That feeling of joy continuing to grow. Until you and that other person are just beaming with joy and goodness. That was sparked just from that one simple act of kindness. And think about how one act of kindness can spread from you to that other person, and the effect it'll have on that person to spread more acts of kindness to others. Until that kindness spreads and that bond is shared with every person on this planet. And take 3 more breaths in this feeling of giving to others and the feeling of joy that it spreads. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Guys ready to go out and do some good deeds? Cool. Well, I want one.
Every time.